So today on Down the Rabbit Hole, I'm going to address one of the biggest topics, one of the biggest pain points for people that get into streaming who have an introverted personality type. Let's go. Every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 p.m. on Twitch TV under the name Morph Games. That's MRRPH Games. And to remind you as you're listening to this, if you do like what you're hearing, please leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, whatever it is you're doing on the platform you're listening to this on. It definitely helps the show and allows me to bring more content to you. All right, so what I was cryptically hinting at in the promo, for introverts getting into streaming, one of the biggest areas that they struggle in, and I say they, but I also mean me as someone who is definitely introverted and somebody who has dealt with anxiety for most of their adult life. The number one issue relates to one of the three main rules that I like to talk about, and this one is the ABT rule. Know your ABTs, always be talking. When you get into streaming, when you get into content creation, well, specifically streaming, you have to talk to people. You have to engage people. And even though when you first start, you do not have a lot of people viewing your stream, you might think, well, why do I need to talk all the time? Because you never know when people are going to show up. You never know when they're going to pop into chat. And because you don't know when they're going to pop into chat, and you know that you have a very short window to engage this person, to give them a reason to want to come back, you have to be as active and talkative as possible, which means essentially talking constantly. Now, there are caveats that are exceptions to that, but that's the gist of what I'm getting at here. You have to do that. Now, there are tricks and tips that I will get into a little bit later as someone who is, as I mentioned, is an introvert and has dealt with this. But the bottom line remains, you have to do it. You have to talk. I was going back and forth with somebody on one of my social media accounts on TikTok, and they liked the idea of the rule. And the way that they put it was they like the rule as long as you're an extrovert. This is not a good rule, they said, if you're an introvert. Now, I did go back at them. I don't always do this, but I did go back at them, and not because they were disagreeing with what I said, but because they had a fundamental lack of understanding of how the introverted versus extroverted, mentality works when it comes to this. And unfortunately, you have to do it. You have to be active. You have to be talking. And I understand that it's hard for introverts, but you still have to do it. There is not a separate rule for introverts versus extroverts. You have to engage the viewer. You have to do it. I suppose if you really wanted to try to put up a sign or have a banner on your stream that said, I'm an introvert, that's why I'm not talking, people go, oh, okay, then that's fine. I'll just sit here and watch you silently play a game. I don't really think you're going to capture anybody. And I know maybe people think, well, that's not fair. And again, let's call this one of my hard truth podcasts today. I'm sorry. I am sorry that is not comfortable for you, but it doesn't change the fact that you're still expected to do it, right? Now, let that sink in for a minute. I'm not trying to be rough on you. I'm just telling you exactly how it is. As I always try to tell people, it doesn't matter that it makes you uncomfortable. You have to find a way to do it. Now, if you feel attacked or pressured, maybe you need to think about what I'm saying, but obviously keep listening because I do have some tips and tricks. So we got that out of the way. Introvert or not, you have to keep talking. And I've explained the reason why. But for my introverted brothers and sisters, I'm going to tell you some tips and tricks that I have employed to make this better for myself. Now, I can tell you that coming into this, I was somebody that occasionally had to do public speaking for my job. Talk to a room full of 20, 50, 100, 200 plus people. And this is in person, right? Before the pandemic. I'm at work, my day job, I'm constantly doing Zoom calls, Skype calls, what have you, to tons of people. And for me, that's a little bit better because you don't actually see them. You don't actually see their faces usually. I mean, I can minimize the app and still talk if I want to. That makes it easier for me. But in the streaming realm, think about it, it's actually very similar to that. You don't see the people that are in your chat. In fact, you can turn off your view account if that makes it easier for you. Made it easier for me. Because then not only do you not see anybody, you don't know how many people are in your chat. And that's a big deal if it makes you uncomfortable seeing people. You could just talk as if there's no one there. Or if it makes it easier to pretend that there's 100 people there, if that gives you motivation to keep talking, whatever. So that is one thing you can do, right? You can pretend as if you're talking to no one, or you're talking to 100 people, whichever works best for you. The second tip, which I just alluded to, is turning off your viewer account. Turning off your viewer account is a big deal. If you're someone like myself who felt pressured and extra anxious because I saw the view account, large or small, rise or fall, whatever it was, that was anxiety inducing for me. So I learned very early on to turn off the viewer count. The third tip that I have for you in regards to this is to do more collaboration. Now, I would say that anyway. I think everybody needs to be doing as many collaborations as possible because it helps to grow your audience. And when people are listening and they hear a different voice or they get a different visual because there's more than one person there, it's more engaging and more interesting anyway. So that is a tip. Now, the reason why this works and the reason why I do it is because it takes some of the pressure off me. One of my mods is usually in Discord with me. So her voice goes out over chat. Now, she doesn't have her video on, but her voice goes out over chat. And because there's somebody there, I feel it makes it easier for me, even when she's not talking, just knowing that, she's there to talk. And when she does talk, that takes the pressure off me to have to do 100% of the talking. So that definitely works. Another part of collaboration I do is I have since changed my niche to more of this podcast type. I do weekly streamer interviews. I quite often have a guest on the actual main podcast, and I do stream reviews. And when I do stream reviews, I invite the person who I'm reviewing to go on to Discord with me, or at least be in chat so I can ask them questions. So through all of my podcasts, all of my streams per week, I 95% of the time have somebody on Discord chat with me, which reduces the pressure. So that makes it just easier for me going forward. But there are other things you can take into consideration too. Maybe your anxiety doesn't come from seeing the viewer number rise or fall. Maybe it doesn't come from having to just tell stories or present a topic, right? Maybe it comes from people seeing you, which there are some people that might say, well, why are you getting into streaming if you don't want people to see you? It doesn't really matter why. You've chosen to do this. You've listened to my previous advice and tips and said, yeah, this is what I want to do, even though it makes me uncomfortable to be on cam. There are ways you can get around with that and still be a successful streamer. You could become a VTuber. That's probably the one thing I could tell you could do. I'm not going to advocate leaving the cam off completely with no kind of avatar or something for yourself, because that doesn't give the viewer anything to really engage or connect with. So you could look into becoming a VTuber, and that way it's just your voice that is going out there. So that is another viable option for people. So as I'm closing out here, it doesn't matter that you're in streaming and you're an introvert, or that you have some sort of mental concern that you're dealing with, such as anxiety or depression. When you're doing streaming, there are certain expectations. And this isn't just me saying you need to do this to grow. This is just a universally accepted fact in streaming. You have to talk to people to engage them into your chat. and to grow your community. You have to do that. The fact that you're an introvert, the fact that you have anxiety or some other kind of mental situation you're dealing with, it doesn't matter in this context. What you need to do in order to be successful is find a way to deal with that using those tips that I've mentioned before. Try them out. Try them out. Maybe come up with something of your own. If you do, reach out to me on my various social platforms and let me know what you did. I think that would be really exciting to kind of explore something new that I hadn't considered before. But understand that despite my kind of hard line here that you need to do it anyway, look, I am the same as you. I not only dealt with this, I deal with it constantly. Every single stream that I go on, there's a little bit of anxiety still. Even though after a year or so of doing this, I have become much more comfortable in front of the cam, much more comfortable talking to people, to the point where people are like, man, I wish I could present like you. And which I just find hilarious. If they only knew what I have gone through and the fact that I still feel nerves every single time I go live, then they would be surprised. In fact, one last thing I'll leave you with here is, if you've caught any of my interviews, whether it's for charity streams, just streamer interviews, my stream reviews, any of those, and this doesn't happen all the time, but watch towards the very end of me streaming. And quite often you'll see like a blank look come across my face. And I'm just like, okay, guys, well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks. Have a great night. And what is happening every time you see that look come across my face, and you'll know it when you see it, is my social battery has just ended. And despite how much fun I was having prior to that, no matter how active chat was and hyping me up and how well the stream was going, I just hit a wall. The wall is probably, anxiety probably attributed to it. Just the fact that, you're kind of wearing a mask to an extent contributed to it. But whatever it was, I hit a wall. And I want nothing more at that point than the stream to be over, so I do not have to talk anymore. Right. And I have learned not to try to just push through that anymore, because it just makes it worse. And it takes me longer to feel better when the stream is done. So if any of this resonates with you, if you know you're an introvert, if you know you're dealing with anxiety or depression or anything like that, and that is making it difficult for you to either consider streaming as an option, or you're considering quitting streaming because of your struggles with this, just know that you are not alone. I'm here to help if you care to reach out. But whatever it is, don't quit first. Try some of these tips and tricks. See if they help you. Because you got into this and you've stuck it out this long, or you're thinking into getting into this and giving it a shot, because in both cases, you have something to offer. You have something unique about you that you believe will draw people to your channel and give you a real shot at success. And I know you can make it. So give it a shot and keep going. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. Give it a review if you could. Much appreciated. And as always, thank you for your time. Stay safe. If you enjoyed the show, have questions or topics you'd like covered in future episodes, let us know in the comments or send us a message.